Welcome to the solution of the practice activity on risk management. So as we already discussed, there are 5 key IT audit findings, and based on these, we can identify the different risks. So here is the risk register template. So what would be the first risk? The system requires only a simple 4-digit PIN for staff login. The auditor confirmed that many staff reuse the same PIN across devices. Weak authentication due to 4-digit PIN. And if you want, you can add more details, like the same PIN is used across different devices. What would be the second risk? Parent contact details are stored unencrypted in plain Excel files on a shared drive. The folder is accessible to all staff, not just the admin team. So the second risk would be unencrypted parent contact details stored. Okay. And what would be the third risk be? The IT technician backups the database weekly, but he stores the backup files on the same computer. That doesn't sound very smart. So, backup stored on the same computer. That's another risk. What's the fourth one? There is no formal policy or training on how to handle student data securely. No security training for handling student data. Okay, and what's the last one? A new student enrollment portal is under development, but it has not been tested. So, new enrollment portal with possible vulnerabilities. Okay, so these are the 5 different risks that we have identified. Now, what would be the asset that is affected? In this case, it would be the student management system, which is mentioned here, the student management system. For the second one, unencrypted parent contact details stored. What is the actual asset that is impacted? You can put maybe parent contact information. Let me just expand this column a little bit. Okay, that is the second one. Now for this one, backup stored on the same computer. Maybe the asset is the backup data. Okay. No security training. Now this basically impacts the student data. Don't worry too much if you're not able to very accurately or pinpoint the exact asset. Just a general idea is good enough. For this one, it would be the enrollment portal. Okay, now moving on to the more interesting stuff. So what is the likelihood that weak authentication due to 4-digit PIN and then it being reused on multiple devices? I would say it's very likely. Okay, so let's assign 4. What about the impact? I would say the impact can be major because people would be able to access each other's details. What about the risk score? So 4 cross 4 is 16. We'll come to the risk level later on. What about unencrypted parent contact details? As you're aware, with the recent standards like GDPR and all of those compliance regulations, this can be a pretty serious risk. And since all the details are unencrypted and stored on a shared folder, so I would say it's almost certain that this risk would materialize. Impact would also be catastrophic because imagine if all of those details get leaked, then it can cause serious reputational damage. So risk score would be 5 cross 5, 25. What about backup being stored on the same computer? Obviously not a good strategy because if that computer gets damaged, then your backup is also lost. So it's possible. I mean, it's not sure that it's going to happen, but it's possible. And in terms of impact, I would say it can be catastrophic, right? Because if you lose your actual server plus the backup, right? So you're pretty much done. So 3 cross 5 is 15. Now, please don't worry too much about these scores. If you're off by one number, for example, it's okay. Because obviously this is a bit subjective. And in the real world, you'll obviously have access to a lot more data points and you'll be making a bit more informed decision. But here, the idea is to give you a bit of hands-on practice, okay? So no security training for handling student data. I would say likely and major, 4 and 4 and then 16. New enrollment portal with vulnerabilities. It's likely that it will get hacked. And what will be the damage? It can be catastrophic or major, depending on how we interpret it. So that's what we have done so far. Now moving on, Let's go to the next part, which is the risk matrix. And based on that, we'll be able to fill these two columns, okay? So in the second part of the practice activity, we need to fill the risk matrix. It's a 5x5 risk matrix as we did previously. You can also download this from the resources section of the lecture. So the resources section has three files: the PDF, which describes the lab, risk register template, and the risk matrix template. So you need to define score ranges for low, medium, and critical risk levels in the legend. So from here, we can see that this risk has a score of 5 cross 3, 15. This one has 20, and this is 25. So maybe 15 to 25. We can obviously adjust it later on if it is incorrect. And then for the medium, I would say the minimum score is 5. So maybe 5 to 14. Because we have already covered 15 here, right? And then obviously low risk would be 1 to 4. Now let's just assign the labels. Let's just name these as critical. These would be medium. And this would be low. I'm going to put some of the scores. You can do Alt plus Enter and it's going to the next line. So this is 5. This one, for example, would be 3 cross 3, 9. This one is once again 5. What about this one? This is 1. What about this one? This is 5 cross 5, 25. Okay, so that's how we can fill this risk matrix. Now going back, based on these scores that we have defined, let's put the categories of risk in the risk register. So if we see the scores, 1 to 4 is low, 5 to 14 is medium, and 15 to 25 is critical. So 16 would be critical. Okay, this would again be critical. This would again be critical. This seems to be a very risky organization. Obviously, they're using very weak authentications and poor backup policies, unencrypted data, all sorts of problems just waiting to happen. So all of the mitigation plans, none of them can be accepted. That's true. So for example, let's say for the backup stored on the same computer, let's say we outsource it to another organization, okay? So in that case, the risk would be transferred. For the first one, let's say we enforce 8-digit pins and then we enforce that the same pin cannot be used on multiple systems, then we're using the mitigate risk strategy. For this one, let's say we enforce encryption. Once again, we are mitigating the risk. We are not eliminating it or avoiding it, okay? No security training for handling student data. We can obviously again mitigate it by offering security awareness trainings, a new enrollment portal with new vulnerabilities. Well, we can actually avoid this risk by not launching this application because it seems to be an application which is basically asking for trouble with new vulnerabilities that haven't been tested. Now, please bear in mind, in this practice activity, there were a few subjective decisions and there are, some things which can be done a bit differently, but just to give you a general idea and a bit of more hands-on practice. So I hope you've learned something valuable from the practice activity.